Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, everyone. My name is Raja Bukhari. I'm the program manager for the Center of Excellence in Responsible Business. And we are going to start the webinar in about 3 more minutes. We're just waiting for a few more participants to log in. Thank you for joining us today. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a few more people coming in, but I just wanted to begin the webinar and just go over what we're going to be doing today. The Gender Diversity Awards application process started earlier this year in January. And the purpose, once again, is to have companies disclose the progress that they've made on gender equality in the workplace through their corporate policies and their practices, and then sort of meet the standards that international companies have been setting on reporting for Pakistan. This is a part of a greater initiative that we had started a while ago with the International Finance Corporation, which is a World Bank Group company, on creating a more investor-friendly environment for Pakistan to be more attractive to capital investments, foreign funding, etc. and really like enhance Pakistan's corporate environment and promote formal employment. So one of the ways of doing that is to look at social disclosures, and companies that do a really good job at social disclosures are able to show their stakeholders, their internal and their external stakeholders, how attractive they are as employers, as opportunities for investment to their consumers, especially as the world moves more towards conscious consumption and better working conditions for Pakistan's workforce and the workforce at large around the world. So before we step into the schedule for the webinar, which would be going over the submission guidelines and answering some questions that have popped up during the application process from the applying companies, I would like to invite the head of SERB, Nazir Sheikha, to say a few words.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm just going to give you a little background about the Employer of Choice Gender Diversity Awards. This process is, this is our third cycle of the awards, and it's been co-developed by the IFC and PBC. It's based on a gender scorecard, and the scorecard basically is a way of us identifying and allotting points to companies who are doing well, or who are doing showing gender diversity in particular areas of their organization. So when we're looking at that, it's very important to see that based on our 5 principles, which Raja and Safia will be going into, where each company stands. And over the years, we've been running this award for 2 cycles, 2022 and 2023. Now we're in 2024. We've had very good responses and feedback from companies, and we've learned a lot from companies in this process as well. So, and as Raja says, it showcases your organization to others in many ways. It also helps you highlight that to future employees as well, and attracting female talent and even male talent as well, because an organization which is progressive on gender diversity is inclusive, and inclusivity leads to better practices and a better work culture overall. So when we look at that, depending on what the question is asking in the scorecard, and if you're able to give evidence of that practice in your organization, it helps you. The scorecard will help you internally to see where you are as compared to good practice globally. If you're able to give evidence, how much evidence are you able to give, whether it's a formalized process, whether it's a policy, whether it's just numbers tallied together. It tells you where you are on that process in your organization, or in that journey in your organization. And if it can also be a way to take that feedback to the relevant department, relevant person looking after that data, and to say that, okay, now we need to advance more on it. So that's the good thing that comes out internally. Externally, it will not only build your basically reputation amongst your peer organizations, but it will also improve the reputation of Pakistan. And we've all heard this 24% representation of female labor force participation. We've also heard that we are almost at the bottom of the gender gap index. This is always floated out. But when we see what companies are doing inside within their organizations, we are able to realize, and we're able to showcase that a lot of these companies' good practices are at par with global good practices and global best practices as well. So it basically adds to the understanding, it basically adds to the brand of Pakistan as a whole. because, you know, numbers can only sell a part of the story. It's also the story itself, or the qualitative part, that tells the other part of the story. So I'd like to say that we've had an overwhelming interest in the awards this year. We approximately 40 companies have registered till now, and we hope these 40 companies, and we hope to double that number of applications, and to make these awards a success, and to see that Pakistan is progressing in the right direction. This year, the awards will again be sponsored by the IFC, and we've got a lot of, we're already planning a grand event for this award. The awards will have lots of activities, and it will also coincide with the closure of the IFC PVC Climate to Equal project as well. So there'll be some fanfare on that side. So I do look forward to greater participation from the companies that have applied and are planning to apply, but just thinking about it. So we do hope to see your name in there. So thank you. Now I'm going to hand it over to Raja, who will be taking you forward with the general questions that we've been asked that come up normally in the webinar. Not in the webinar, in the awards. All right, thanks.
Thank you so much, Nazish. And I did want to emphasize on what Nazish said, that there's a lot of things that companies are doing that are actually really progressive and enhance gender equality. And companies have been doing that even before this culture of inclusion started being promoted globally. And it's a little unfortunate that that doesn't get reflected in the way that in the way Pakistan's corporate sector and our economy at large is presented. So this is why we need you to sort of uplift yourself in your progress through this process. I would also like to emphasize that the awards process in the 2 cycles that we've had, it's been really useful for us to collate data and best practices that we can send out to other companies so they can learn from each other. Because a peer learning platform, we find, is a much better way to enhance good practices, as opposed to using a more academic line or using examples from companies abroad, which is not a bad thing. And we do find there's a lot of similarities, particularly from regional peers that companies can emulate. But at the same time, when you have a local example of a company that is functioning in the context of Pakistan, of course, that seems more doable and can be replicated by other organizations. So before we proceed with the general FAQs, I wanted to invite Safia, who's our program coordinator and is looking after this project, looking after the applications that are coming in. She's a great asset to our team and has the information that companies can use to make sure that their applications are submitted correctly. And for us, it's also easier to not miss out on any important information that you may want reflected in the awards process. So Safia, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, Raja. Thanks, Raja. Thanks for introducing me. So I'll quickly go over some of the submission guidelines. These guidelines are also available on our website. Other than that, I'd also go over a few questions that I've been asked frequently throughout the application process. But before I begin, I'd really like to stress the importance of our nomination form. I would request all the companies to please nominate themselves if they're interested in applying for the awards. Once you nominate, we'll send out an opening package or welcome package with information on how to submit. It will include an Excel sheet, it will include the submission guidelines, and it will include general updates from the award cycle that we want to share with the participating companies. So please do nominate yourselves before if you're planning to sign up for the awards. Now I will share my screen and run over the submission guidelines. Is my screen visible? Okay, great. So the awards end on 15th May. Make sure you submit all your documents by 15th May. That is the primary deadline so that we can also move forward with the checking, with the procedures that we do. We explained in the last webinar how the cycle works. So if you're interested in knowing what we do with the data once we received it, it's a good way. It would be beneficial if you go back to the first webinar. Please note that all the queries are now public, like all questions are now public. We've removed the private option to promote the spirit of disclosures in Pakistan. We did notice a lot of companies did great work, but there was some hesitance to submit documents publicly. So we've change that this time around. It is important to submit all your documents, make sure they're complete, make sure the links that you submit stay relevant, they don't make sure they keep working until the submission deadline. So we'd appreciate if you could share OneDrive or Google folders instead of WeTransfer so that they stay with us throughout the process. Also, all questions that ask for quantitative data must include numbers. This includes questions on the wage gap, questions on maternal and paternal leave. So make sure those have qualitative numbers because that's what we will score the company on. Other than that, for MNCs particularly, and because we need Pakistan-specific information for this project, so make sure all information is related to Pakistan. If your policy is adapted from an international policy, we'd like to know how you've adapted it locally and maybe with an official point of contact from Pakistan to know that this policy is actually in place in Pakistan. Because we understand that while global policies are present, there is some difference when you adapt them to local context. So we need to make sure that we see those. We'd prefer if you submit through Google Drive, Dropbox. I've already said this. Please CC both me and Raja in your email so that we can make sure that we have your submissions and they don't get lost. Make sure you name your organization because without the name, we're unable to identify who submitted what. So please make sure you do that. Then there are multiple sections of the scorecard. So we'd appreciate if you could submit each section accordingly, make a folder for each section, then make a separate link or add separate documents for each question. So you can add 1A, 1B, and for each question, you can just add the numbers. If there's multiple sections, we prefer if you write 2, 3, 4, whatever the corresponding section is to that question. Then if you're submitting multiple files, please join them. For example, if you're submitting 3 different proofs for 1A, make sure they're all in the same PDF, just so it's easier for us to go over it and we don't miss out on anything. Also, if you're presenting data from your sustainability reports or any sources that are online, we would appreciate if those are labeled with numbers so that we can actually go to that page and find the data. This helps us massively because when we don't have the page numbers, we have to go over the entire report, and sometimes we might miss documents and the company can lose points. So we'd appreciate if you mention the page numbers properly. And then if you're sending links, make sure they don't expire. Put them in a Word file with the question number so we know which link goes for which question. These are just generic guidelines. They're also present on our website if you want to have a look. We also share these with companies that nominate themselves. Now I will just run over some of the questions that I normally receive or some of the queries that companies generally have. The first one is submitting data for 3 years. So when it comes to policies, we request that you submit the latest policy that you have. But for questions that ask for quantitative data, for example, the wage gap or number of women returning to work after maternity leave, we prefer that you submit 3 years just so we can see the record. And it just makes it easier for us to understand how long the company's been calculating this data for. If some data is missing or if you've not calculated it, but you've only started doing it this year or the year before, you can submit that. We don't if it's not available, then you can submit from the years it has been available for your company. The second question that we receive quite frequently is, can we submit the same files for multiple questions? Yes, you can do that, but if it's a big report, please make sure the page numbers are clearly mentioned. And even if you're submitting the same file for 3 or 4 different questions, just make sure it's still marked according to the question number so it's easier for us to go over. The third question is a little bit more on the theoretical side. It's about what are green jobs. You might have noticed we have a new section in the scorecard focused on gender inclusive climate action. So green jobs, the broader definition is they do not necessarily have to include roles that focus on carbon emissions or producing technology that is green, but it can also include roles that focus on making the system more efficient, making waste management more proper in the company. So it is a wider role. It is a wider bunch of jobs that are counted as green jobs. They can also include jobs that work in the supply chain to make sure your suppliers are compliant with their climate climate actions or climate promises that they've made. It can also be focused on waste management, making sure your waste management or water management is sustainable, energy jobs that promote energy efficiency. It can include more technical roles like producing products that are also more sustainable, environment friendly. And it can also include roles such as communication, how you're marketing, how you're making sure your jobs are gender inclusive, or the products that you make are focused on climate change responses of your company. Now I'll hand over to Raja to maybe answer some questions and go over the scorecard.
Thanks a lot for that, Safia. So I'm checking the chat box. I haven't received a lot of questions. I have one about the submission guidelines. So once you register your company, and you have to register your company, it can't be that you are filling out the scorecard and we don't know because we don't have you in our list of registered companies. So once you register, we receive an email, a notification, and based on that, Safia will send you a welcome package. And in that you will have an Excel sheet that has all the questions listed and the possible responses to those questions. So by that, I mean, आपको मैं दिखाती हूँ इधर. You'll see that I need to remove this extra window in my screen. Sorry, now I can see. All right, so in the Excel sheet, you'll have the questions listed like this, and then all the different options. And basically, you have to just highlight which options you have selected, or the ones that you are providing data for. I will say that if you select an option here, for example, let's look at this one, and you say it's 25 to 50%, that is not the answer to the question. That's just letting us know how you've answered the scorecard. We need obviously a supporting document that has to be submitted with every question that you answer in the way the guidelines that Safia went over illustrate. So the Excel sheet will just guide us through the responses. I'm just repeating for clarity's sake, will guide us through the responses that you have selected. And then you have the folders that have been submitted in the way Safia highlighted that actually contains the evidence to what you've highlighted in the Excel sheet. I hope that's clear. Yes, Safia has linked the nomination form. Basically, that's what I mean when I say registration form. Basically, you're nominating your company for the awards. So you're registering for the awards, but you're essentially nominating your company for the categories that have been listed for the awards. I did want to say that we will be announcing, I think, 5 new categories of awards. They're not directly linked to having the greatest disclosure, but disclosure in specific areas in which you've excelled, because we would like to highlight that some companies have done a lot of good work in certain areas to really solidify their contribution there, but they may not have made the same strides in the other areas. So we don't want that progress to sort of be hidden. Just because you're not in the top 5, it doesn't mean that you haven't done really good work in certain places. Can internal email correspondence be considered as proof to some questions? What do you think, Safia? Can you answer?
Sure. So last year we did take into account internal correspondence, but this time, since we've removed that option, we understand that internal correspondence can also be public information, but we prefer that if you're disclosing it to us, you are also ready to disclose it to the public and display it somewhere on your website or maybe on your social media. So while it can work, we'd also like to see proof of it being somewhere outside, like other than emails, just so we know it's actually been enacted and it's actually relevant or to your organization. Because we're not going to audit, but it just helps us make sure that that type of practice or policy that you're sharing through email is valid. Also, one more question that I frequently receive that I forgot to talk about was is there any fee associated with this program? So I'd like to inform you all that there's no fee throughout. We will not be charging any company at any point. We do, however, do consultations after the awards are given out with companies who want to help understand where they are and to benchmark themselves, but that's a different process. In this cycle and throughout the awards, whenever you submit your information, even during the award ceremony or before it, we will not be asking any company to pay us any money. So just to get that out there for everyone who's asked me this question.
So that means Up until the ceremony takes place, you will not be asked to pay anything at any time. If somebody asks you on our behalf, then please know that that's not been supported by us. I also wanted to say, when you talk about internal email correspondence, it really depends on what is covered in that email correspondence. So for example, if you promote the uptake of maternity leave by actually emailing any pregnant employees that, look, these are the provisions that can be given to you. If it's an email to one person, then we know that you've communicated to that one person. It is still not a very solid form of evidence. But for example, if you send out a mass email through your internal communications team to all your employees, reminding them of your family-friendly policies, of childcare provisions, of whatever it is that you cover under that umbrella, then we know that this is something that we can validly take as evidence. So it really depends on the quality of, it really depends on the details of what that internal communication entails. And of course, please remember that when you submit anything to us, it'll be our right to use that information to publicly disclose to stakeholders. And once our directory is up and running, we will also be putting your efforts in gender equality, highlighting them on our directory. For another question, mass communication is sent by CEO. Will that be considered good to go? Of course, as long as it's aimed at your general employee population. And there is a proper email address, a company email address. There's like names of people who are relevant to that communication highlighted, etc. आप हमारे perspective से आप देखो कि आपको हमें present करना है कि ये सारी information जो है हम अपने employees के सामने present करते हैं for their benefit. Then if that message comes across, and that's good enough for us. Publicly available data on the number of grievances is not available, but we do have a complete mechanism with harassment committees in place. So if you, I think जो मुझे इसमें समझ आ रहा है कि आपने कभी पहले grievances की data publish नहीं की कहीं. You can send it to us. And like I said, we are working on a mechanism to highlight companies' sustainability initiatives. And then we can then present it in a certain way. Of course, we will review with you कि हम क्या present करेंगे, क्या publish करेंगे. And once that's done, your company will have technically publicly declared its grievance numbers, whatever's been filed and resolved. For the purpose of the awards, आप हमें numbers send कर दें, and we will count them as your submitted data. And आपने जो complete mechanism की बात की, वो आप policy document, एक और question asked you for the actual policies behind your harassment, anti-harassment efforts, and उसमें harassment committee का जो inquiry committee कहते हैं, inquiry committee के जो आपका setup है और system है, उसके भी अलग से questions हैं that will award you points if you submit information. Can you please define green jobs? Safia, do you just want to repeat what you said earlier about green jobs?
Sure. So green jobs are jobs that focus on the environment side of the company. They're not just directly related to maybe maybe the sustainability reporting or stuff, but they can also include jobs that support compliance of your suppliers to climate action. They can include jobs that focus on the company's waste management strategies, how to make the workplace more efficient in terms of energy, water management. So all those jobs are considered green jobs. In the manufacturing and the textile side of things, they can also include jobs that focus on communication and that focus on communicating how the company works on its climate pledges, for example, or how it focuses on the products that it's creating to combat climate change. It can also include jobs that are more focused on creating products such as electric vehicles, or that's just one example, but green buildings. So it links to a number of jobs, and it doesn't necessarily need to be something that is massively focused on just climate change, but it can include multiple variations, and it has quite a lot of variations, and they do depend on from sector to sector. But any jobs that focus on creating or efficiency in the workplace, making sure things are sustainable, communicating those to the stakeholders are all considered green jobs. We do also have another question, Raja, by Nida in the comment box. So maybe you could go over that.
Yes, sure. With our domestic violence policy currently undergoing the approval process but not yet rolled out, still be considered equivalent to the marks designated to it. So Nida won't be considered for this cycle, but you can definitely submit them for the next one. Because the window for your submissions are up until the 30th of June 2023. So tab tak jo policies were in place or information that's relevant to that time period, those will be considered. Then going back to the FAQs, the Q&A section, what is considered ethnic minority? So Pakistan has multiple ethno-linguistic groups. Some of them are more underserved than others. So companies that have representation of those ethnic groups, then obviously they appear as more inclusive employers. This is why we're asking you to share this information with us if you have it. We would also appreciate if this information has been published somewhere else before. तो अगर आपने कहीं पहले भी declare की हुई है तो उसके through आप भी हमें link दे दें. Once again, please do not submit to us names or phone numbers or email addresses of any of your employees. This also counts for the grievance mechanism, grievance numbers ka question. We don't want to see who is the actual person who filed the grievance. Even if we get this data, we don't share it anywhere. So हमारी तरफ से तो कोई ऐसा मसला है नहीं, but I'm just saying that you don't have to submit the names of employees or information that identifies them. And for the ethnic minorities question, I would also recommend if you can look at some of the reports on the composition, the demographics of Pakistan. Usme ethnic minorities usually listed hoti hai. And an ethno-linguistic group would be like simply like my examples, Sindhi people, Punjabi, Mahajir, etc. So this is considered an ethnic identity. How to submit documents for each question, Ariana, we have submission guidelines on our website. That Safiya also reviewed a bit earlier. So उसमें exactly लिखा हुआ है कि कैसे documents arrange होंगे and कैसे label होंगे so that we can make sure that we receive and consider every document that you submit to us. Rafi is saying that we're registered but haven't received the file yet. Okay, we'll look into it. Your email address is in the chat box, I think. Anyway, if you can just type out your email address in the company from which you belong, then we will check our registration record and see if we maybe perhaps missed out. We'll also be sending an email, a mass email to confirm with people that we've received their registrations and if they have any questions to reach out to us, and a reminder of the deadline, which is 15th May. So I think that is everything in the Q&A box. If anyone has any more questions, please let us know. Can you repeat the relevant time period again? So as I said, this is something that Safiya brought up to me as well, Abhi, fiscal year say it's different for everybody. So for us, the fiscal year would start on the 1st of July of a year and then end on the 30th of June of the next year. So we are looking at the 1st of July 2020 to the 30th of June 2023. That's 3 years. Math is right. For some companies, I think their fiscal year ends in December. So whatever is in the up until 2023, basically. So if your fiscal year ends on the 1st of July 30th of June 2023, you'd submit to us data until that period. Or if it ends on the 31st of December 2023, then you submit data to us until that period. Usse pehle ke 3 years ke saath. And this only applies to quantitative data. So you don't have, if your policy changed in 2021 and now it's a different policy in 2022, I don't need to see the policy from 2021. I just need to see the latest policy that existed when when this reporting period closed. And no information from 2024, obviously, that will then be included in the next cycle. I hope that answers your question, Misha. I think there's another question here in the Q&A box. Okay, thank you, Rafi, for sharing your information. I don't think we received a registration from HubCo until recently. So perhaps ye hua कि we've missed out because kal ya parson mein aayi hogi to. And we'll just get back to you. We'll send you all the proper information. And companies who registered and won awards last year can apply. Yes, you should. We would like to see if you would win this year too. It's always very exciting for us to see how the previous winners perform and what level of competition they've been provided by the nominees this year. I'd also like to emphasize that I think from the first cycle, the only company that placed again in the next cycle was Engro Fertilizers. They were in third place, where they had the bronze award in the first year, and then they received the bronze award in the second year. But with significantly higher points. It's just that the winners, Jazz and Pepsi, also did phenomenally well, and hence the ranking for this year. Till June 2023, right? Yes, let me just type this answer here. So 30th June 2023 for those companies whose fiscal year starts on 1st July. Okay. All right. And then there are more questions in the chat box. Safi, do you want to take some of the questions? Are there questions?
There are two.
Okay. I think one of them is really nice. What's the winning prize?
So the
Winning-
winning prize is basically we do hand out these big shields which say employer of choice and have your company's name on it. We have 3 for the top 3, and then we have some other shields that we give out to honorable mentions. So we'll have those. We have 10 awards that we give out each year. We have 5 which are the honorable mentions, which are the top 3 and the honorable mentions, which basically the top 5 companies, but the other 3 but the other 5 are basically awards that we're designing, which are we're still in the process of designing them. So we will be communicating that maybe in our next webinar, or maybe in our maybe through our social media. Yes, Misha, there are categories. We might be focusing on maybe the idea of wage gap, gender inclusive climate action. These are just some of the categories we're thinking of right now. We'll officially communicate them properly. And Ariana, I would request that you go over the old webinar because we went into detail of how to attach the documents for each question. There's also submission guidelines. So when you make a folder, you put all the questions, all the answers for each question with the name of the question and then add them. That's how you submit. So there'll be a folder for every section, and there will be a submission for every question. So once you go over the webinar that we did last time, it would be easier. It's on our website. It's also on our YouTube page. The data submission deadline is 15th May. So there's quite a lot of time to submit that data. The awards process did open up in January. And this is our second webinar. So we have been urging companies to submit as soon as they possibly can. So you do have quite a lot of time to submit. Are there categories? I've already answered this. Are there any more questions? Because we registered our company on 7th March. Okay, Rafi will be sending out the email to you right after this call. Which it has the submission guidelines and everything. So then hopefully things will be more clear for HubCo.
Could you also please check if you've received an email from us, because we want to make sure that not going into your spam folder or your junk folder or something like that. So please check early and make sure if you have to change your email settings, you do that so you continue to receive correspondence from us. Sadaf Iqbal has raised her hand. Sadaf, can you please type in your question? Okay. A couple of other things that I wanted to review What is showing up in the background? Introduction to the Senate, my goodness. Anyway, so I wanted to just say one more thing that's important, which is that when we are talking about companies and how their eligibility to run for the awards, we want to say that we're not just specifically focused on companies that have a lot of women in the workplace. If some of the companies that have won previously, they have been able to do so because based on the strength of their policies and their reporting practices and how overall their sustainability outlook is, and that has been really helpful for them to be viewed as progressive organizations, progressive employers. So and if you go through the scorecard, you will see that we're not actually just looking at the number of women who are a part of your organization. We're looking at things like how family friendly your workplace is. Do you have maternity leave, paternity leave? Do you have childcare assistance? Do you have training programs for your employees, particularly for women? And especially how is your climate action? How are your climate action efforts? How do they take into consideration the impact of climate change on women? They also look at whether you report your wage gap or not, or whether you calculate your wage gap. What are you doing to make sure that you can implement living wage, which is a slightly different thing from minimum wage. Living wage is basically the kind of the salary or income that is required to live to live an overall decent life in different areas of the country. So for example, living wage would be different for Karachi as compared to Multan. And then all these different policies that exist, they don't actually ask you to have a large number of women. In fact, some of the companies that did really well in our awards process are from the power sector or the energy or the manufacturing sector, which are not very male dominated, which are very male dominated sectors, or they tend to be. And a couple of other things that we want to refer to. They are all available, by the way, in our FAQs. They are on our website. Let me just post down the link to our website that goes exactly to the awards page, and you'll find a few things there for your help. Since we're running out of time, I don't want to delve too deeply into the FAQs right now, but those questions, any additional questions that you have may be answered in that document. But I did want to emphasize on one more thing. Any company can apply for the awards, but you have to make sure that you are a for-profit business. So NGOs cannot apply. We just don't have that kind of criteria that we find suitable to to evaluate an NGO. If you're a social enterprises at the end of the day are businesses, even if they have specific social or environmental goals that they would like to meet, they are for-profit businesses, so hence they can apply. SMEs are very strongly encouraged to apply. This may also be a great opportunity for SMEs to develop their company policies, to be a part of a conversation in which they can really professionalize their business. So, and if we have enough SMEs, then we can build a different awards category. Unfortunately, that so far hasn't happened. But we obviously are very hopeful. We'll see. We know that more and more SMEs would be would find themselves included as the awards become a more a cyclical thing, especially because lots of big names are associated with the awards, and that should encourage actually SMEs to connect with the wider business community. I think that is it for now. We may have another webinar, I think, in a month or so. I'm looking at Safia right now. So then once again, we'll have some FAQs that we can answer. We are going to do 3 rounds of reviews. So the reviews go through different team members at CERB. And that helps us, verify what each other has seen so we can have the most accurate scoring possible. This time, last year, when a company would submit to us, we would send them feedback on their submission and give them an opportunity to improve their submission. We unfortunately won't be able to do that this year. It is a very hefty process, and it takes a lot of time and resources. But this is why we're hosting these webinars, so that we can answer these questions, any issues that may arise in the submission process as we go. And obviously, we're available by phone or email to answer any other questions that may not be covered during the webinar. I'd also like to say that it is very heartening to see that the response to the webinars, even to the awards, even in the third cycle, has been really strong, and it's just getting stronger. And we're looking forward to reviewing the submissions as they come. The deadline may be May 15th, but it is a time-consuming process, so please get on it right now. It'll also give you time to ask us questions, because we are going to stick to the deadline and will not be making exceptions. And for any questions that you think don't apply to your company, or you feel like because of the nature of your industry, it's just not fair that certain questions don't apply to you, there are a ton of questions. We spent a happy amount of time creating these questions and comparing them to others sort of reporting procedures, and looking at what Pakistan needs, as you know, what kind of data should be disclosed for Pakistan to enhance the economy. So there are many questions for companies to score on. I doubt that any company will be able to answer all of them, because it just may not be relevant to them. So there's plenty of opportunity to score really well. And like Safia said, that we are adding more awards categories. So they'll be announced, I think, within a week, maybe a week or so, maximum by Eid, before Eid. So you can look at those awards categories and see if that is something that's possible for you. So thank you so much for joining us today. We are available to answer any other questions by email or phone, and we look forward to seeing your submissions. Thank you.